Everett Blackwood was a 38-year-old financial advisor. To the outside world, he seemed to have it all: a successful career, a lovely wife, and 2 children. He was a professional, always polished and poised with a kind smile that put his clients at ease. His wife, Imagine, was just as impressive. She balanced her work as a part-time yoga instructor with raising their 2 children, Phoebe and Jasper. Together, they were the picture-perfect family living in a beautiful home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Despite the appearance of perfection, cracks started to appear in their ideal life. Everett's long work hours and frequent business trips created a growing distance between him and Amin. The strain from his demanding career left him with little time for family. Imagine, too, began to feel overwhelmed. Raising 2 kids, teaching yoga, and maintaining the household was becoming too much. She started to feel like she was losing herself in the process. The couple soon found themselves at a crossroads. Imagine's yoga classes were becoming more popular, and she was offered the opportunity to lead a yoga instructor training program. This meant she would have even less time for their family. So to keep everything running smoothly, they decided to hire a nanny. Little did they know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change their lives forever. Daisy Summers was the nanny they hired. At just 18 years old, Daisy had just graduated from high school and dreamed of becoming a renowned photographer. She wasn't the kind of experienced professional they had expected. Instead, she was an artist, passionate about capturing the world through her lens. Her portfolio, filled with melancholic black and white portraits and vibrant urban scenes, was stunning. Daisy came from a small town called Mill Creek, and she had always felt like an outsider in her community. Her art was her escape, and babysitting was just a way to earn some extra money before she left for a gap year in Europe. Daisy's aunt, who lived in Oak Heights, mentioned that her niece was looking for summer work, and Imagine was intrigued. She thought it would be nice to have someone with a creative flair around their children. After interviewing Daisy, Imagine was impressed by her calm and collected nature. Daisy spoke with confidence about her love for art and her plans to bring creative activities into her time with Phoebe and Jasper. Imagine was convinced and hired her on the spot. In the beginning, everything seemed to go well. Daisy quickly won over the children with her playful stories and art projects. Imagine enjoyed the break from the pressures of motherhood, and Everett seemed more at ease too. He started coming home earlier and even began timing his schedule to align with Daisy's presence. They began to talk about photography, a topic Everett had never shown much interest in before. At first, Imagine was happy to see her husband engaging with Daisy. She encouraged the connection, even suggesting that Daisy show Everett her portfolio, thinking it might help her network in the future. But as the weeks passed, things started to shift. There were subtle changes, ones that went unnoticed at first. Daisy's presence in the house began to alter the dynamic. Everett would often find himself lingering around her, asking questions about her art or admiring her work. Their interactions started to feel more personal, and Imagine began to notice these moments more and more. At first, she chalked it up to her own insecurities, but soon she couldn't ignore the small signs. One afternoon, after a long day of work, Imagine came home early from teaching a class. She walked into the living room to find Everett and Daisy talking. They were sitting close, their heads bent over a phone screen. When they saw her, they quickly separated, as though they had been caught in something. Daisy nervously explained that she had been showing Everett some of her latest photographs. Imagine tried to brush it off, but a feeling of unease settled in her chest. As the days went on, more strange things happened. Imagine would find Everett spending longer than necessary in the kitchen when Daisy was making snacks for the children. There were moments when he would glance at Daisy, his gaze lingering a little too long. Imagine told herself it was nothing, just her mind playing tricks on her. But the small, subtle changes started to add up. One evening, as they were getting ready for bed, Imagine casually mentioned that Daisy seemed a little distracted lately. Everett's response was quick, almost defensive, as if he were trying to shield something. He told her he was just busy with work and that Daisy was a good nanny. He quickly changed the subject, but Imagine felt the tension in the air. She knew something was off but didn't know how to address it. Soon, Imagine started to feel that something was wrong in her marriage. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the changes in Everett were noticeable. He started dressing more sharply, wearing cologne on weekends, and even changing his routine to spend more time at home. One evening, Imagine complimented him on his new look, but he brushed it off, saying he was just trying to make a change. Still, there was something nagging at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the situation than met the eye. She began paying more attention to Everett's interactions with Daisy. She noticed how Daisy blushed when Everett complimented her, or how their conversations seemed to go on longer than necessary. Imagine found herself becoming more jealous, and her suspicions grew stronger with every passing day. Her mind raced with thoughts of what was happening behind closed doors. Was she imagining things? Or were there feelings between Everett and Daisy that went beyond a professional relationship? Imagine wasn't sure, but she couldn't ignore the tension. The weight of her suspicions began to weigh heavily on her mind. It wasn't just the way Everett acted around Daisy that bothered her. It was the way he seemed more distant from her. He was less affectionate, less engaged with her and the children. When Imagine confronted him about it, he would dismiss her concerns, telling her he was just stressed from work, but his behavior only seemed to confirm her worst fears. Imagine decided to keep a closer eye on things. She started taking note of every interaction between Everett and Daisy. She watched as they shared quiet conversations, their voices low and intimate. She saw the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. It was subtle, but it was enough to make her stomach churn. She began feeling paranoid. She started to question every little detail, wondering if she was just overreacting. But her instincts told her something wasn't right. She had always trusted Everett, but now everything felt different. Their once solid relationship was beginning to unravel, and Imagine was unsure of how to stop it. The emotional distance between Imagine and Everett deepened, and their relationship became strained. At home, the atmosphere was tense. The once warm and welcoming household now felt cold and distant. Imagine struggled to balance her suspicions with her desire to keep the family together. Meanwhile, Everett found himself drawn to Daisy more and more. Their connection deepened, and what started as innocent conversation began to take on a more intimate tone. Daisy, too, was feeling the pull of something she didn't quite understand. She had always prided herself on being independent, but she couldn't ignore the growing attraction she felt toward Everett. He was older, successful, and everything she had dreamed of. At first, she tried to convince herself it was just a passing crush, but as time went on, the feelings only grew stronger. Daisy's internal struggle mirrored Everett's. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He was married with children, and Daisy was barely out of high school. But the chemistry between them was undeniable. Everett convinced himself that it was harmless, that he was just going through a phase. But as their relationship progressed, it became clear that things were far from innocent. The tension between the two of them built to an almost unbearable level. They began finding excuses to spend more time together. Everett would come home early from work or make excuses to stay later, just so he could be around Daisy. Daisy, too, found herself staying longer after putting the children to bed. Their conversations stretched into the night, filled with shared secrets and unspoken desires. One night, the tension reached its breaking point. As they stood in the kitchen, after everyone had gone to bed, their proximity grew too much to ignore. Everett reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Daisy's face. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, everything seemed to shift. They stood there, frozen, as the world outside their little bubble ceased to exist. It was a moment that would change everything. For Daisy and Everett, there was no going back. Their relationship, once filled with innocent conversations and quiet admiration, had transformed into something more. The boundaries that had kept them apart had now been crossed, and the consequences would be far-reaching. Imagine had no idea what was unfolding right under her nose. She was too caught up in her own feelings of betrayal and confusion to see the full picture. But she couldn't ignore the subtle signs. The weight of the situation was too heavy to bear, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came crashing down. The once perfect family had begun to unravel, and no one could predict how it would end. This tragic story serves as a powerful reminder of the profound consequences that deceit and betrayal can have on everyone involved. What began as a hidden affair, full of secrecy and false promises, quickly escalated into a tragedy that took an innocent life and shattered families. It underscores the importance of trust, honesty, and open communication in all relationships. Affairs and lies, no matter how well hidden, can only remain secret for so long before they unravel, causing irreversible harm. This case serves as a cautionary tale for anyone considering betrayal, highlighting how easily lives can be destroyed. It also reminds us that the emotional and psychological toll of such actions extends far beyond the people directly involved, affecting the wider community in ways that can be hard to heal. The essential lesson is clear: integrity and transparency are vital in every relationship, and the absence of them can lead to devastating consequences that last a lifetime.